This is a walkthrough of a API deployment collection that I've been developing to help me actually bring an API that I've designed to life. So I have in a Postman workspace here a products API. So I have the API here where I have the Open API definition for the products API. It's just basic CRUD. I can add, get, update, and delete my API or my products. And then I've got a schema down here for the product, and I got a API key security scheme requiring that I have a security scheme. And then I've generated a handful of collections here for my contract testing for publishing docs, and I have mocks published here, and I have performance and security testing being worked on. But I want to, this API is fully designed. It's ready for kind of development and thinking about and use. So I want to go beyond the mock and publish it as an API, and so I've chosen to do that at AWS using a handful of services. I have another one that I did with DynamoDB and AWS Gateway. This one's going to give me a little bit more robust functionality, deploying the API with the API Gateway, backing it with a Lambda and an RDS database. So in my operations workspace, here I have a variety of collections. One of them is my deploy API to AWS, Gateway plus Lambda. That's the one I want. So I'm just going to share that back to my products workspace. And then because I know I'm in demo mode, I'm gonna share the remove API as well, because I know I want to be cleaning these up as I'm building them, so I can do other demos. All right, so now I can go back to my products workspace, for my products API. I've got my base set of collections here, but then now I've got this deploy, which is a multi-step way that I can deploy this open API. Now, I don't want any changes. Cancel. Why won't you just go away? There we go. All right. So I have a pretty lengthy process, which I'll walk through, but you can just run this as a monitor as well. It doesn't have to be, or a runner. I can walk through each of these steps, which I'll do for this demo, kind of peeling back the layers. But normally I would just choose to do it as a runner, and I can choose this deploy collection. And then I have a products environment that I can choose, and then I can run it this way, and it just runs all the steps as one. So it's a single deploy. But I'm going to walk through it here because similar to the other deployment collection I have, we need this open API here, right here. We need it in this environment. So we have an environment called deploy Lambda and RDS, where we'll be storing all of our keys and other things that we're going to need to deploy this API. So this collection here will just let me kind of step through, use this open API stored in the environment across each step without having to actually make an API call to Postman's API each time I need it. So we're just going to pull that into the environment. There it is. I put it in the visualizer. And then I'm going to create a table function because I need an RDS table created, and I can't do that through the API. You can only do that through SQL. So I need to fire up a temporary Lambda script that's going to do that for me. So now my Lambda is set up, and then I'm going to run it to create the table for this API. So now I just created a table in my database, and I'm going to remove that function because we don't need it. And then to be able to run each of the lambdas behind individual endpoints, that's a MySQL database. I'm running RDS Aurora for the database, but you need a MySQL Node.js. You have a Node.js MySQL dependency for that. So I manage that with layers. I have a layer that is basically everything you need to run an API, all the Node.js dependencies in a single zipped up file. So it's here. We're going to load that as a layer that we can use across many lambdas that we're going to be creating for our to power our API. So there we go. We got a layer that we can use. And then it's going to dynamically create an index.js for each lambda that's behind each individual HTTP method in our open API. We have 5 of them, so I'm gonna have to run this 5 times. Now, if you run this as a runner, it figures it out all for you, how many times it's got to run for you. Here, manually, you gotta initiate it enough times. So there's 1. So basically, it just created 5 index scripts, 1 for each of our HTTP methods. Put them on Amazon S3 for us to use. And then we're going to do the same, creating a package.json that just basically, because this Lambda script is going to live all by itself, it's got to have a proper packaging to go with it, describing what it does. So we're going to create that for each of the 5 endpoints. Okay. Now we have to actually package those up. We have to package those dynamic endpoints, the index.js and the package.json. We got to actually zip that up. So we need a Lambda function to do that. So we're going to spin up this Lambda function that just basically zips up folders on Amazon S3 and then writes it back as a zip file that we can then deploy. So basically, I just deployed it, and then I'm gonna run it. Again, I gotta run it 5 times because it's gotta build 5 packages, 1 for each of our endpoints. Zip file, no such key. Interesting. Okay, that one already exists. Huh. Alright, well, I'm going to keep going. We'll see what that does. See if it chokes it. Alright, now I'm actually going to deploy each Lambda. Five times again. And again, it would figure out all of this for you if it was being run with the runner. All right. And then again, I'm going to prepare the open API just like I did with my DynamoDB one. I'm going to basically prepare my open API, add the vendor extensions needed to speak to Lambda, run the Lambdas, and then I'm actually going to publish that to the API gateway. Now it's just published there. It's not actually deployed in the context of the AWS API gateway. Now I've got to actually deploy it. I'm going to just deploy it to a development stage. Using the gateway, you can define your own stages, usually like development, staging, production, or you can call them anything else you want. And you can just, I'm using this to deploy to a development stage. So now our API is available as part of a development stage. We can access it. Now, in our open API, we specified that there has to be an API key present for anyone to access this. So to get an API key, first we need a usage plan for this API that will describe, how much of the API people can access, what the rate limits are, how much can they grab, per day. We have a day limit here. and allows them to burst, but we can adjust this after the fact. But every API should have a usage plan, and then we're going to create an API key for us to actually use our API. But then that API key's got to actually be added to that usage plan associated with it to be able to work. So all this is stored in our environment, but we've basically just walked through and deployed an API as well as a set of lambdas behind each individual API and an RDS database behind it. So unless something got screwed up, I should be able to actually hit test here and send a test request to our new API. I got an empty array, that's a good sign. So let's go to add request. In my body here, I've got a test product that I want to add. Product test, we'll make it 1. And then hit send. Get back an identifier. Oops, Postman didn't like something. Go back to my get request, hit send, and I've got a product in the database. So now I've got an API that I can create, read, update, and delete my products. It's pretty basic. It's a basic CRUD API, but because it's powered by Lambda, I can add in additional functionality. That'll be one of the future deployment collections I do, is a one that injects more code in rather than it just being a basic database, create, read, update, delete, and allow you to transform things coming in and transform things going out, adding another dimension, but trying to keep it as automated and standardized as possible. So all you got to do is just develop your open API and then hit run a runner that runs your collection, and making it a lot easier and more standardized how you deploy your APIs, really mapping it out step by step and having a single collection that you can use and share with different people within workspaces to actually be able to deploy their API. And then I've got one here to clean it up because I'm in demo mode and I'll be cleaning things up. But hopefully that helps show how Postman can be used for not just making calls to APIs, can actually be used to define and design your APIs and deploy them. So depending on what your infrastructure is, you just kind of queue up all the steps. Hopefully you're using infrastructure that has APIs so that you can orchestrate and deploy exactly what you need using the infrastructure you're already putting to work. So I'll be showcasing this collection as well as my more simpler DynamoDB collection as part of my Postman build and monitor webinar tomorrow morning. April 22nd, and 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. So if you want to see how this collection fits into a wider strategy as far as API first, designing your API, how I got this open API, and then this part is all about deploying it and then making sure we're monitoring and running tests and making sure our API does what it should be doing. You can tune into that. All right.